Tuesday morning. Yeah. Gopal Champu again. This is a scene in Vrindavan, and Madhukanta is speaking to Radha and Krishna, and others are also hearing. And Madhukanta is going to speak about Dwaraka, Kurukshetra, and the Gopis. Kind of a nice blend of topics. Now remember, we're in Vrindavan, and he's speaking to Radha and Krishna, or they're the principal persons who are hearing, and others. But it's very unique. Speaking about Dwaraka, when all these marriages were occurring, the Gopis were not completely aware of this through the messengers. They heard bits and pieces from others. This was stated earlier. Now the intentions of Krishna should be considered. Krishna got married to pass his time, since the Gopis and the queens were actually one in nature. The Gopis heard that Rukmini and others were very affectionate to Krishna during the pilgrimage to Kurukshetra. This shows that they were actually one in form. Pritha, Gandhari, Draupadi, Subhadra, the wives of the other kings and the Lord's cowherd girlfriends. This is a translation of a verse from chapter 84, which is the Kurukshetra story. First text, translation. Pritha, Gandhari, Draupadi, Subhadra, the wives of other kings, and the Lord's cowherd girlfriends were all amazed to hear of the queen's deep love for Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead and soul of all beings, and their eyes filled with tears. So he had great love for the queens. Chandravali was Rukmini. Radha was Satyabhama. Vishakha was Kalindi. Lalita was Jambavati. Shama was Lakshmana. Shaibya was Mitravinda. Bhadravali was Bhadra. Padma was Satya. They were almost equivalent in nature. Though they were of the same nature, they were not exactly equal in giving happiness to Krishna. Listen to this metaphor. As rubbing oil on the feet soothes the eyes, so when he enjoyed with the queens, the Gopis felt some relief. Because of some identity. In this way, they could pass the time without going insane. Yes, the queens, who are somewhat equivalent of the Gopis, had internal spurti of relationships with Krishna. One can understand that from 2 chapters in Bhagavatam, chapters 83, 84. That's the Kurukshetra pastimes. But when Krishna was at a distance, when Krishna at a distance plays his flute, touches a creeper with his hand, or touches the water with his foot, the gopis become stunned, and their hair stand on end out of joy. It is said, then another text from this chapter 35 that we've been reading, O king, thus during the daytime, this is the final verse of the chapter, during the daytime the women of Vrindavan took pleasure in continuously singing about the pastimes of Krishna, and those ladies' minds and hearts, absorbed in him, were filled with great festivity. Krishna also married 16,000 other queens, which will be described later. Whatever has happened has happened. Now, however, O Radha, may the women of the city far away give Krishna, whom you embrace, for now in Braja, even those who associate with Krishna cannot compare with you. I'll read it again. I missed a word. Now, however, O Radha, may the women of the city far away give up Krishna, whom you embrace. For now in Braja, even those who associate with Krishna cannot compare with you. When the talk had extended this far, the two reciters went with all others to their residences. Radha and Krishna, hearing the pleasant talks, attained intense bliss and went to the house of pastimes within the mansion. Gopal Champu. And here's another section from Gopal Champu. Although their longing to associate with Krishna had attained the highest summit of intensity, the gopis did not reveal this to anyone. The gopis all affirmed, I would never do anything to break the rules of religion. Krishna also affirmed the same thing. Torn by attraction to Krishna and by hesitation also, the gopis were tormented. Seeing no other way to conquer the gopis, who were all afraid of the arrows of his flirting glances, Krishna began to play his flute. And it's over now. Hearing Krishna play the flute, the gopis said, in this chapter 35, text 14, Krishna knows how to play the flute. He composes his own songs, and to sing them he puts his flute to his mouth. When he plays, either in the morning or in the evening, all the demigods, like Lord Shiva, Brahma, Indra, and Chandra, bow their heads and listen with great attention. Although they are very learned and expert, they cannot understand the musical arrangements of Krishna's flute. They simply listen attentively and try to understand, but become bewildered and nothing more. This is his way of telling chapter 35. At first, Krishna and his elder brother Balaram again and again played graceful duets on their flutes. As he took care of the cows in the splendid forest, with his many glorious qualities, Krishna filled his Gopa friends with wonder. Accompanied by his elder brother, day after day, he practiced playing the flute, displaying his supreme skill. At this time, the full glory of his form became manifested before the teenage gopis. In this way, Krishna manifested the glory of his form to the faraway gopis. the natural glory of the gopis' love for Krishna then became manifested. From hearing the sound of Krishna's flute, the gopis could infer the existence of all his other virtues. In this way, it is seen that Krishna's gopi beloveds were actually great philosophers, learned in logic and inference. Separated from Krishna and their hearts anointed with the oil of love for him, the suffering gopis became dry and withered. But now that autumn had come, the gopis were not as sorrowful as they had been before. Radha's friends included Lalita, Vishakha, and others. Chandravali's friends included Shaibya, Padma, and others. They declared their friendship in their hearts. I guess that means between them, the groups of gopis. Also, although only in a concealed way, and carefully mentioning Balaram also, they began to talk about Krishna. The gopis sang the following song. So this is part of a Champu structure. They're short phrases that are sung again and again. So here's the song section, side by side, in between with the narration section. Their friends, as their friends sing, Balaram and his younger brother Krishna expertly dance. Their splendid heads are crowned with beautiful mango flowers. Their amorous desires are like a new sprout rising from a seed in the forest of their fresh youthfulness. Decorated with many beautiful jewels and peacock feathers, their hair is like small dark clouds with stars and rainbows. Their wonderfully beautiful curling ears are like the whorls of newly blossomed lotus flowers. When the bumblebees see these flower ears, they become filled with desire to drink their honey. They become struck with wonder and say, "What vine has borne these flowers?" This is the gopis singing about Krishna. Their reddish hands are handsome, gracefully moving lotus flowers that shower drops of nectar on the bumblebees. Attracted by the sweet fragrance of their flower garlands, the buzzing bees offer a great tumult of jubilant prayers. Their glorious forms are light and dark, and their splendid garments are also light and dark. And the final verse of the song: if they follow the Surabhi cows into Gokula village, then all our sufferings will end. Then back to the narrative. For the purpose of causing the people there to fall in love with him, Krishna stayed in the area around Gokula. Surrounded by their friends and cows, the two brothers, Krishna and Balaram, are now seen in the land of Vraja. They are the best object of vision for all beings that have eyes. Their faces are like graceful lotus flowers. Their flute music is splendid. Their eyes are filled with restless glances. This is seen in the following words of a gopi. Oh, gopi friend, when playful Krishna returns to Vraja with his friends and cows, he casts glances at us from the corners of his eyes. Those arrow glances have now wounded our hearts. In the eyes, the most glorious eyes of a girl, a supremely saintly and respectable girl, stands the flute player, Kamadev Krishna, who is indeed Kamadev himself. Krishna made the gopis gradually aspire more and more to attain his association. Gradually he dispelled their shyness. Although he was already the master of all arts, he had his brother Balaram teach him how to play the flute. The moment he was taught, Krishna produced the most enchanting melodies on his flute. Fearful that they may accidentally reveal their love for Krishna, the goddess-like Vrajagopis said of Krishna and Balaram, quote, carrying ropes and sticks, playing in the forest, protecting the cows, and enjoying other like pastimes, Krishna and Balaram play their flute. Their flute melodies make moving beings stunned and motionless, and the unmoving beings filled with restless activity. The two brothers have reversed the natures of the living beings. The gopis also said, Krishna and Balaram changed the nature of every living being. Krishna especially has uprooted the nature of us gopis. As Krishna and Balaram played enchanting melodies on their flutes, Krishna thought, aha! I have enchanted and attracted the gopis. Especially, I have attracted the gopi named Radha. The living entities take birth in various species of life. Gradually, I teach them the spiritual truth. Eventually, when they learn to hear them, I will play my flute melodies so their hearts can hear. Krishna thought in this way. Then he wished to test the responses of the different living entities. First, he brought the lower living beings under his spell. Then, one by one, he brought the higher beings under his spell. Finally, he made the gopis' hearts wild with bliss. The cow's response, when for the first time they hear Krishna's flute melodies, is described in these words, quote, pretending to be the music of a flute placed onto Krishna's mouth, a shower of nectar falls. With the tongues of their ears, the cows drink that shower of nectar. Their actual tongues are stunned. They have stopped eating grass. Their only thought is, what is that? What is that? What is that? What is that? The gopis said, by hearing the melodies of Krishna's flute, we gopis attain a condition like that of the cows. When they hear Krishna's flute, still there is a difference between us and the cows. The cows respond by gazing in Krishna's moon-like face at every moment We gopis cannot gaze at Krishna's face in that way. In what yuga will we be able to gaze at his face? By playing melodies on his flute, Krishna enchants and attracts the various forest creatures. It is said, when Krishna plays his flute, the birds and beasts in the forest are all enchanted. The Gopis said, the fame of Vrindavan forest is spread over the entire earth. Playing on it, the glory of the touch of his lotus feet, placing on it the glory of the touch of his lotus feet. Krishna enjoys pastimes in Vrindavan. Hearing the music of Krishna's flute, the peacocks and other forest creatures assemble together and dance. Indeed, they have transformed Vrindavan forest into a great dancing arena. The Gopis also said, we Gopis have no power to describe the sacred glory of Vrindavan forest. The peacocks and other creatures who reside in Vrindavan forest, creatures who perform great pious deeds at every moment, are worthy of being worshipped by us Gopis. We Gopis are only householders, living in our houses. We do not live in Vrindavan forest. We are very wretched. Of what good are we? The forest creatures can gaze at Krishna as much as they like, but us Gopis cannot even gauge on his shadow. On another day, the does leave their mates and run to Krishna. As was the previous verse, this verse is spoken by a gopi. Oh, gopi friend, how wonderful this is. Hearing the sweet music of Krishna's flute, the does have become enchanted. Abandoning their stag mates, they run to Krishna. With sidelong glances, they lovingly worship Krishna. The Gopis also said, by birth we are women. Many virtuous people honor us with all respect. Our husbands are famous in Vraja for their sincere affection for Krishna. These does are not like us at all. Accompanied by their husbands, they freely approach Krishna. Fie on us impious gopis! In no way are we as fortunate as these does. Seeing some birds attracted by Krishna's flute music, the gopis said, we think the birds in this forest must be great sages, and Krishna must be their guru. If this were not so, then why would these birds silently listen as Krishna plays on his flute? In the following words, the gopis describe these birds as sannyasis. Quote, Krishna is a great sage in the center, and the birds around him on all sides are also great sages. These bird sages have no material desires. On another day, some demigoddesses became attracted by the music of Krishna's flute. The gopis described them in these words, quote, as they flew nearby in their airplanes, the goddesses were attracted by the music of Krishna's flute. Gazing at the splendid, charming handsomeness of Krishna's form, they were all enchanted. Never had they seen or heard of anyone handsome like him. As they gazed at him, their braids and all else became disheveled and undone. Were any of them not attracted? Of these demigoddesses, the Gopis also said, these demigoddesses were completely enchanted by Krishna's music flute. Who are we, poor souls, that we are so fortunate as to have taken birth as girls in Krishna's land of Vraja? Krishna's flute music makes the unconscious beings and the beings whose consciousness is worthless attain full spiritual consciousness. These powerless beings then jump over their previous unconscious state and begin to move and walk. In this verse, the Gopis describe the activities of the rivers when they hear Krishna's flute music. Quote, hearing Krishna's flute music, the rivers become stunned. With blossoming currents and the jangling warblings of swans and other birds, the wild with bliss waves approach Krishna. With the arms and hands of their waves, they place a current of lotus flowers at Krishna's feet. Of the rivers, the Gopis also said, if abandoning their courses, the rivers, who are all the ocean's wives, swiftly flow and meet Krishna, then what are we poor Gopis in comparison to them? They must have performed many pious deeds. We are not their equal in the slightest way. That is why it is right that we give up our bodies and thus renounce the happinesses and distresses of this world. On another day, the Gopis describe the clouds with these words, quote, the rain cloud is Krishna's friend. This is so not only because they have the same dark splendor, but also because they are alike in many other ways, and also because they always help each other. Thus, when Krishna plays Malara raga, melodies, on his flute, the clouds come and shade him from the burning sunlight. The Gopis also say, aha! Look! Even though it is very cool, and even though something stays above all else with great love in its heart, the rain cloud carefully serves Krishna with its shade and its nectar rains. Fie on us wretched Gopis, very proud of taking shelter of Krishna alone and keeping him alone in our life's breath. We are wretched because, even without serving Krishna, we somehow remain alive in this world. In the last section. Aha! Even though it is made of rocks, and even though it has taken birth as a hill, Govardhan is filled with bliss. This the Gopis affirm in the following words, quote, glorious Govardhan hill is the best of Krishna's servants. Krishna and Balaram climb on it to play their flutes on its summit. With the touch of Krishna and Balaram's lotus feet, Govardhan feels bliss and manifests many symptoms of ecstasy, beginning with the standing erect of the blades of grass that are the hairs on its body. Its entire body offers in the service of Krishna's friends. Its entire body it offers in the service of Krishna's friends and the cows. To be continued. That's not the end, it's to be continued. Tomorrow morning. We're going to hear some more about Govardhan tomorrow morning. Certainly Govardhan is very special, and the Govardhan Leela is very special, and what are we doing here? Let's go. But alas. But I have so many duties and so many important things, and Jiva Goswami taking us on a journey to Krishna. He who, reading his Sandarbhas and other writings, it's so detailed and so meticulous and so difficult to understand. What was the consciousness of Jiva Goswami studying under Rupa Goswami? What was the consciousness of Rupa Goswami? And we're followers of those personalities. And they're followers of Lord Chaitanya, who is Krishna himself in the mood of Radharani and tasting from the position of a devotee of Krishna, specifically of Radha, tasting the love that Radha has and passing that on to his followers, and they're passing on to us. Straight from the verses of the Bhagavatam, but with little people write poetry, but what poetry can compare? You know, create an image and then another image and another image, and it transports you not to, you know, where other poetry takes you. Material society, in forgetfulness of Krishna, has people that have poetic skill and intellectual skill and musical skill and dance skill and athletic skill, and it's all misdirected. Nothing, I mean, the skills are wonderful, but how to redirect the misdirected? And according to the preface of Srimad Bhagavatam, the misdirected civilization of the age of Kali is meant to be redirected specifically through the Srimad Bhagavatam. And of course, there's different things within the Srimad Bhagavatam, besides the 10 topics and the expansion of those 10 topics. Each one of those 10 topics can take you a lifetime to understand. Have any of you seen that little animated video presentation that Danavir Maharaj made of Vedic cosmology? It's available online. You've seen? I've seen it several times. It's well done. And the part of it is there's interviews of South Indian Vaishnava Brahmins from Madhva line and Ramanuja line. And their whole life is just dedicated to, I'm sure there's other things, but very dedicated, singularly focused and dedicated with great detail and charts and wisdom on cosmology. And that's just, that's an important part, but it's just one part. Take any other part. Take anything with this within the Vedas. Take music or architecture. During this presentation that we gave Sunday to the Farmington Hills group, that last picture is a picture of Lord Vittal's temple. And today, it's whatever it's called, a National Historical Monument place. So because it was partially destroyed, there's no actual worship that goes on there. But, and so many Angkor Wats and so many. I don't understand all of what that's all about, but what the basic idea is, it's a depiction of cosmology in a structure, a temple architectural structure. I mean, what was the consciousness of people in Vedic times? And I'm kind of tempted, we're so challenged by the view of science that, it's really hard to go there and take the Vedic conception of anything. Because we've been spoon-fed and, so many, at least a couple centuries of science evolving, and it's really hard. Prabhupada said, this is after the 5th canto publication. I wasn't there, but I was told by somebody who was in the room. Prabhupada said, the greatest obstacle for presenting Krishna consciousness, the conclusion of Krishna consciousness, is the blind faith that people have in science. Now, our previous acharyas, I'm going off in this direction, we'll come back to Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. Previous to the scientific revolution and the industrial revolution and, the advancements of modernity, the acharyas didn't speak about science because there wasn't science. There wasn't this opposing view. People just accepted it. How well they understood it is another thing, but they didn't question it. Now, we're trained to question everything, and we have our lens through which we look at everything, and it doesn't allow us to see the Vedic perspective. It's big. Prabhupada said it's the greatest obstacle. The blind faith. 3 times. Blind faith that people have in science. And what is science? It's the 2 things, the senses and the mind. Direct sense perception or interpretation of what the sense perception says, or inference and logic. And, fundamentally, the Vedas tell us they're faulty. And is it arguable? The senses are imperfect, we make mistakes, tendency to cheat, and we're illusioned. Is it arguable? And that's the foundation for science. So naturally they have to do a course correction all the time without all the whole thing. And we over here is the Vedic picture. We have some faith, but it's what to speak of people that don't have faith. Faith is the foundation before hearing, adau shraddha. Someone forwarded to me a quote from Vishaka's book, her life with Prabhupada, and her life before Prabhupada and her life with Prabhupada. It's really nice. She's quoting a lecture where Prabhupada speaks like this, without the reference specifically. Her statement is, what Prabhupada was saying is counterintuitive. Is her words in the book. I don't have to know about the soul, I have to have faith. And then from faith, and when hearing, then I can understand the soul. I can understand myself. And then I can go to, beyond the self. And what's beyond the self? Krishna. Through the process of bhakti. But it starts with faith. The faith in what? Preliminary faith. There's a reality beyond science. Science can't reach it. Or my senses can't reach it, my reasoning process. There's a higher reality. Then in comes the sound vibration. And the presenter of that sound vibration. That's our Vedic process. Just this morning I was listening to Prabhupada say, Bombay, I believe it was, when Krishna says, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, his voice went up a few decibels. Please understand that Krishna is speaking to you in person, directly in front of you. He didn't say it again, but when we're hearing, it's Krishna speaking. Or those speaking about Krishna, that's Bhagavatam. But it's the same. It's Krishna's in that sound vibration. It's just the sound vibration form of Krishna, just like the mantra. And then the Bhagavatam is the expanded version of the mantra. Pack it up and it's the mantra. And then it's the expanded version is the Bhagavatam, revealing Krishna through sound. And that's how we can connect with that which is beyond the senses and the mind. And we don't have access otherwise. We don't have access to truth with a capital T. We have perceptions of what's, and then perceptions change as science changes and our senses change and so on. But we're blocked, we're covered from reality, or the perceived reality is not absolute truth. It certainly takes faith. But it's really sweet, isn't it? And those that are madashraya. I mentioned this yesterday because I'm now hearing a section and that little playing device. Prabhupada speaks on Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 1, more than any other verse in the whole Bhagavad Gita. Place after place, year after year, and it's not in chronology, it's just Maya Sakta Manakparta Yogam Yunjan Madashraya. Madashraya, take shelter of Krishna. With the mind attached to me, taking shelter of me, and taking shelter of me, place after place, take shelter of Krishna means, and it also means taking shelter of one who has taken shelter of Krishna. That's also Madashraya. In fact, it's even more accessible and recommended. But what is what taking shelter of? So how do we take shelter of Krishna? Through sound. How do we take shelter of Krishna? Through sound. Because other people, so many people that are materially covered, people that are scholars and philosophers and orators, they speculate and they say this is what Krishna is. And that's not what Krishna is. Somehow we've some enormously good fortune has come that we've contacted disciplic succession and a very empowered acharya, madashraya personality giving us the sound vibration of Krishna and connecting us with predecessor acharyas that are totally absorbed in connecting with Krishna. We're getting Krishna. Whatever our struggles are, it's petty compared to the bigger picture of life's mission. Really, that should be our focus, and we focus on that. The other ones shrink, and Krishna's intervention comes, his protection, his shelter, his mad ashraya. The all-powerful Krishna will help us, take us by the hand through tribulation and take us to him. That's our process. So let's see if there's some discussion. Wow. We have nothing online yet, so anybody in the room would like to raise something?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. The section where there was a list of the names of the gopis that correspond to each of the queens. I was wondering, have you ever heard anything or read anything where it explains that Vrinda Devi is also one of the queens?
Vrinda Devi is also one of the queens? No. But I know somebody who will know. You can send him a letter.
Okay.
Dinabandhu. You want me to send him a letter? You write the letter and I'll forward it to him. And that, he takes a while to respond, but he'll respond. Okay? Anything else? In the room, anyone else? You're all stunned. Okay, I'm okay if we just, because it's already 8:25. Go ahead.
Just a quick thing, Maharaj. Is this the same literature, the Gopal Champu? Is this the one which Jiva Goswami wrote when he was out of Vrindavan? Something happens with the Vallabhacharya or something like that. And he throws away in the river and Sanatan Goswami catches it down.
I know the story. I don't know if that was the literature. I would have to go and check. And that there's different versions that I've read on that whole scene. But I'll check and let you know. Online?
This question is from Ram Kumar Manoharan Prabhu, and he says, Guru Maharaj, you mentioned about perceived reality and faith. Frequently during the sharing of Krishna consciousness with others, there is the common theme or questions that we devotees are imagining our reality. It is implied that it is delusion caused by our own mind.
Illusion caused by?
Our own mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a comment.
I assume so. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It's just a really quick thing. I think I got a little bit lost in where we are reading from. I know we're on chapter 35.
You know chapter 35.
We're on chapter 35, but 2 classes ago, I believe we read I thought we finished chapter 35, so is this...
Chapter 20, verse 26 is the last. This section was being read because there's reference to verse 26.
Oh, okay.
That's why we read it.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it showed up, in fact.
Okay, fine. Okay, just needed some where we're at. Okay.
Yeah. The day after, well, I think we're going to start chapter 36 tomorrow, because what's remaining with chapter 35 is just a few pages, and it's more of the same. So we'll start 36 tomorrow.
So Maharaj, I think yesterday you talked about eternal time, but like that explanation, like it just like went over like my head. So can you like explain it again?
Sure. I could read. Maybe better to read it, to explain it rather than to read it. Let's go back to Sarga, creation of Vishnu. So keeping it short, Mahavishnu's glancing over Pradhan. His glance is Lakshmi, or Rama Devi, within Mahavishnu recognizes his desire, Icha. So she takes all the living entities that are within the body of Mahavishnu and trusts those living entities to the glance along with time energy. But it's another kind of time than eternal time. It's the sub-reflection or expansion of eternal time. So time as we know it is what goes into creation, past, present, future time. Then now back into the spiritual world. There's this, when we use the word time, there's relative time, there's absolute time. Oh, so in absolute time, or time in the spiritual world, not a moment passes at all. Time in the Bhagavatam, there's a whole chapter, calculation of time by the atom is called. The smallest measure of time is the time it takes for the sun to cross one atom. And then so many atoms makes another measure, and so many, etc., etc. And then comes, the big time, the creation and the annihilation. But it's all calculated out mathematically. So that in that chapter. But then there's eternal time where not even the sun crossing an atom takes place. So eternal time is where time doesn't pass. Time has a function of destroying, and there's nothing destroyed, nor there's nothing created. There's no time as we know it. Prabhupada's language, time is conspicuous by its absence. But there's eternal time. And that eternal time, like all of Krishna's potencies, are under his direction. Or he just desires and they do stuff. So time, there's day and night. There's no day and night is rising and setting the sun. There's no rising and setting of the sun. But there is rising and setting of the sun for the purpose of Krishna's pastimes. Eternal pastimes. So, what's an eternal pastime anyway? We can't think of it. It's unthinkable. Because we can only think of what we've experienced. We can't experience an event that's not in time. There's no such thing in our experience. It's inconceivable. But so the inconceivable is the reality. There's day and night. There's no phases of the moon. It's always a full moon, because that's for Krishna's pastimes. Time doesn't pass, but events take place timelessly, eternally. You know, I've had somebody ask, does Krishna have a childhood form over here, a little boy form over there, and a youthful form over there? It's like, you know, multiple buckets of places where, but it's not like that. How does it work? You know, it's beyond our comprehension. Eternal pastimes. I mean, but that's how time works. It brings, it's an energy of Krishna. Eternal time is an energy of Krishna that creates the appearance, Yogamaya, not Mahamaya, Yogamaya appearance of things happening. And it's just, what's really going on is an exchange of love between the eternal living entities and their shelter. And various energies are moving to create those loving exchanges of all varieties. That's the action of eternal time. Time is really important. It's not easy, it's a very difficult topic to understand, and it's very important because we can't have stuff happen here without time. It's not just like, you know, look at your watch and need time to do it. It's the time energy. And the time energy works variously in the heavenly planets and the middle planets and lower planets. Time passes differently. But that's relative time. And then there's absolute time. Spiritual time. Eternal time. It acts to facilitate Krishna's loving exchanges with the residents of the spiritual world, according to their attraction for him. In Vaikuntha one way, in Dwaraka another way, and so on. According to their attraction for him. Eternal time. Something else?
This is from Ram Sharanadas. How we have sadhana here in this material world, similarly, does the souls in the spiritual world also have their type of sadhana to sustain in spiritual world in order to not fall into the material world?
No. They have spontaneous activities, but not sadhana. They rise in the morning and do their stuff. And they, you know, they have activities, but it's spontaneous. It's not sadhana. And it's not to protect them from falling.
So another question from Archana Vaidya Mataji. In the Bhishma Dev's instructions, we learned that miseries come by effect of inevitable time, and time destroys all good qualities.
And what destroys?
Time.
Time.
Time destroys.
It destroys everything.
Yeah.
It's not just good qualities.
Everything.
Time destroys everything in this world. Go ahead.
The follow-up is blind faith in science also effect of inexplicable time?
Sure.
Now, will sincerity of purpose help in reversing this effects of time?
Yes.
Or what is the remedy?
Yeah. Then you're situated in eternal time. Yes. Are we done? Prabhupada ki? Jai.